So, for everyone who's joining us and the panel, welcome to today's session. The session today is a CAUL webinar where we will be listening to lightning talks by staff from different institutions looking at innovative solutions to challenges faced during COVID-19. This is the second of two webinars we are holding. The first one was held on Tuesday, and that was a roundtable with university librarians from different institutions discussing a similar topic, but from their perspective. The planning group for this event thought that it would be an interesting position to be in, where we could hear from both university library leaders and also the staff that worked within the libraries. And so we put our heads together and came up with these two sessions. But before I launch into the presentations and giving you a bit of housekeeping, I'd just firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today. And obviously we're coming from across many different lands and places around Australia and New Zealand and maybe even further afield. But I'd just like to acknowledge particularly the First Australians and the lands on which we meet today, and pay my respects to all elders past, present and emerging, and particularly any that may be in our presence today. So the purpose of this session is to hear from library staff and their perspectives on innovative approaches to COVID-19. I'm sure you've all been on Zoom a lot over the last 3 months. We'll try to make this as painless as possible. Things may go wrong, and we're hoping that they don't, but you never know. There's always a challenge here or there. The session will be formal, but we'll approach it in a casual sense. In terms of taking questions, the panel and I had the presenters and I had a discussion before you joined, and we've decided that we'll go through the presentations in order, and then at the end of all the presentations, we will take questions. While you are listening to the presenters today, you can ask questions of them via the Slido poll we've set up. Normally I would say use the chat, but there are so many of you anticipated today. We have over 350 registrations. It will be easier for everyone if you can use Slido, put your questions there, and then we'll get to them after the session. You'll also be able to vote on the questions that you would like answered the most. If you do have a specific question for a presenter, please just note the name of the presenter so that they can see that the question is for them. I'll put the question, the Slido question details in the chat once we get going. So, without further ado then, the first presenter will be Pamela from the University of South Australia. And Pamela will be talking to us about enhanced support to travel restricted students based in China. So I invite you to share your slides, Pamela, and take us away.
Thank you, Harry. So our story starts in January. So like many of you, I suspect, University of South Australia library staff were preparing for the beginning of the academic year, fully expecting it to be business as usual. We were increasingly hearing of reports of a new virus outbreak in China. And then by mid-February, Australia's borders had closed, and we suddenly had over 1,000 new and continuing students stranded in China. They weren't going to make it onto campus for orientation. Didn't look likely that they would make it in time for the beginning of their course. So we needed to do something to support them, and we needed to do that quickly. So this is what we did and why it worked. Firstly, we were prepared. We were prepared to pivot our services because of a decade-long business approach that we had had. So we'd had a digital strategy since 2011, and most of our library resources and services were already online. That was business as usual. Library and IT as units had come together still as separate units, but under the same leadership. And this enabled a really close collaboration and partnership, and also solutions on shared goals. We'd had live chat since 2005, and more recently had transformed our inquiry services into a mostly virtual model called Ask the Library. We had the underpinning infrastructure, I think, to provide a really rapid response to the two challenges that we had identified. And that was that we had students in China that were very likely feeling stressed, isolated, disenfranchised, and we certainly didn't want to lose them. Second was the internet barrier of the Chinese firewall. So we wanted to reach out and provide some reassurance, I think, to our travel restricted students and give them some immediate support and reassurance that they'd be able to access resources and support, course materials, information without any problem. So we started a bilingual chat service that was operated through Ask the Library, and from concept to launch was 10 days, so it was a pretty good effort, and it was ready by the 24th of February. We were very fortunate. We've got 3 Mandarin speaking staff who were willing and able to deliver the service. We also had the expertise to enable the technical elements of this work. So our chat widget was reconfigured so that affected students were directed to our Mandarin speakers. And the service was wound down by the end of March because it had served its intended purpose. The second challenge was how to breach the barrier of the Chinese firewall that restricts access to many websites and resources, and we discovered that it had been affecting the performance of our discovery platform, Primo. So this was solved by the implementation of a temporary virtual private network, or VPN. We used the Alibaba VPN, which was routed through Hong Kong, where there are less restrictions, much faster performance and more reliable performance. So this VPN was rebadged as the UniSA VPN, and students were given a new username and password specifically to access it. And the bilingual chat service supported affected students to get their VPN up and running successfully. So I think together, the UniSA Library and IT were able to provide a rapid response to something that nobody had planned for. And I'm pleased to say that we were able to demonstrate to existing and future students, and I think to ourselves, that we could indeed fulfill our aim of providing access to support and resources anytime, anywhere, and on any device. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pam. Sorry, I'm doing the standard thing of Zoom where I haven't unmuted myself. Just get my screen up. So next up, we have Alyssa from University of Western Australia talking to us about insights from UWA's library's COVID-19 client experience data.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for having me today. So like many of you, UWA has had our own unique and wild ride through COVID, but unlike some of you, UWA kept a minimum of 3 of our 6 libraries open throughout the duration. And in remaining open, we had a front row seat for the student experience through the whole disruption, and became involved in a number of new services which the university commenced delivering because we had that proximity to students. So today I'm offering my highly summarised insights from this period, which I'll show you across the bottom of my slide. But these are highlighted by the voices of our clients, the voices of our staff, and some of the significant figures from our operational data. I'll just start my screen for you. Okay. So the biggest silver lining of COVID has been about people caring for people. And so my first and most significant insight here is reflected in the words of our clients. And the first couple of quotes on the slide here will help us understand the lived experience of students at this time. And many of you have seen examples like this around you as well. And in the context of caring, for us, of course, it meant prioritising the physical safety guidelines that we had to strictly apply to remain open throughout COVID. So why did we stay open? It was certainly challenging to balance the decision-making factors involved, and it took a lot of conversations, including at the highest level of the university, to be confident in our decision. But fundamentally, we were focused on the essential services of libraries. So firstly, access, including a suitable space to undertake online learning and to continue succeeding at university in a fully online format. Access to fast computers with all the necessary applications and very reliable Wi-Fi. And at the height of the restrictions in WA, which I've determined to be the last week in March, our 3 open libraries were still receiving up to 4,000 visitors a week, and up to 50 library computers were still being used every day by students without adequate access to learning at home. And then secondly, information. So obviously, like all of you, we've been moving to e-resources, but our academics still occasionally choose print-only texts. And we knew that our students had no chance of getting those texts delivered to their home in time to successfully complete the semester. So we kept 3 of our physical libraries open. We relocated the high demand collections of the closed libraries, established a daily on-demand retrieval service for the rest of the collections, expanded our digitisation services and digital service delivery for articles and chapters, and we arranged postage or COVID-safe pickups for people who wanted books. And loans in that same week at the end of March were a total of 763, including over 50 loans from the high demand collection. So our physical infrastructure and physical information continued to be really highly valued even at the height of the restrictions. And of course, at the same time, our digital services were being heavily utilised. My third insight theme for today is about the beauty of agile transformation. And again, it won't be unfamiliar to you that during COVID, we had to rapidly embrace new ways of working much faster, much more collaboratively, and with much more streamlined decision making than perhaps the university had been used to in the past. Now, we've had a lot of examples of agile transformation over the past few months, but I just want to mention 2. One being our innovative virtual help kiosks. And I'm not sure how innovative they were, because I have seen a little sneak peek that some others of you may have been doing the same, but they were fantastic in enabling us to offer live assistance to library visitors in our physical spaces without having our staff physically present. And were so successful that our information desks really didn't miss a beat. And the second agile transformation we went through was a much bigger university-wide project to move around 50,000 student exams into a brand new piece of online exam software. And that project was quite incredible, seeing dozens of staff from at least 4 different departments on campus join together to design, implement, pilot, refine and go live with this very complex piece of software in the space of 6 weeks. And so lastly, my final insight is that, of course, teamwork made the whole thing work. Around that last week of March, we were changing our service model about every 48 hours, and our opening hours changed 6 times during semester 1. We asked our staff to work in new offices, from home and from spaces that weren't even offices, and had to become them rapidly. And of course, despite all the challenges brought about by COVID, great teamwork has thrived throughout, and I've been really proud to be part of a wonderful supportive team here at UWA. And so my favourite quote is the 3rd one on the slide, which is from one of my frontline team members. And that's all from me. Thanks so much for your time.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alyssa. Let me get my list up. Next up, we have Rowena and Kate from the University of Southern Queensland. They will be talking to us about growing connection and building belonging, online library support during COVID-19.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My slide's fine, is it? Just some confirmation nods. Yes, awesome, thank you. I'm Rowena McGregor, and I prepared this presentation with my colleague Kate Derrington, and together we're the librarian and learning advisor for health and communities at USQ. Unfortunately, Kate has lost her voice, so I'll be doing the presenting today. I'm just going to step you through how Kate and I designed and adapted with some other colleagues an online study support program for the COVID-19 context. Now, we all know that as a result of COVID-19, students have experienced a high degree of uncertainty and disruption caused by the unexpected and often unwanted move to online study. And in addition, significant changes in their personal circumstances have left many students underprepared and perhaps under-resourced for that same online study. So our response was to redevelop an existing program of evidence-based learning support. The original program was built upon KIFT's transition pedagogy, being intentional, student-centred, so just in time, just for me support, and extending beyond any initial orientation. And in addition, we had used a holistic engagement model, inclusive of social engagement, founded on the work of academics Kathy Stone and USQ's Patria Redmond. We wanted to increase a sense of belonging and the likelihood of student persistence. Our slide shows a selection of student chat comments and survey responses mapped to the transition pedagogy and engagement models. But what did it look like in practice? So together we offered, and with another team this semester, twice weekly 1-hour Zoom tutorials with a weekly focus on a specific skill pertinent to that particular time in semester. So 14 discrete topics were offered over semester 1. Each tutorial provided approximately 15 minutes of prepared content or a demonstration. And the remaining 45 minutes was given to questions on that particular skill or any other area of student concern that presented itself. The redevelopment involved doubling the previous available sessions, not just to offer an additional time for students to access the tutorials, but that was important, but also access to another learning advisor and librarian team. And this has really provided valuable new perspectives on the content and also on the delivery. We provided additional COVID-19 sort of context-related content. There's a lot of C's. And our online and take-home exam session was extremely popular. We also provided access to our program or our content well into the exam period, which wasn't the usual course. And again, that was in response to assessment changes and student needing that support. We evaluated the program through the semester, and this was to assess whether the provision of that ongoing support and attention to all those elements of engagement were appropriate. Well, I'll talk to one of each of those elements now, starting with the transition pedagogy. So you can see that just in time and just for me support was one of those elements. And we provided this by offering that flexible content when most students were most likely to need it. And we adapted the content according to the needs of the attending students. So we questioned them at the beginning of the session and found out where, what they were interested in and so on, and very much tailored the content to that. We also aim to demystify and encourage support-seeking behaviours. So we referred students to other support and introduced them to other folk who could help them at USQ. And we did this to build the student confidence in their new study environment. For the engagement area, I'll just focus on social engagement, and I consider this as our signature engagement element. So this focus is all about building community and relationships and that sense of belonging with the students. And we aim to accomplish this by introducing ourselves and most importantly, being really authentic and practicing listening and responding with empathy. And the students did respond to that very nicely. I think I need to mention promotion as well, as it's very important to that COVID-19 environment. It's been important to be able to reach the students. So to date, we've shared our online study support program through our personal and professional connections. It's available via the library website and shared by our fantastic client support team on chat, phone and email. The program is promoted on different course and discipline Moodle sites, and also featured in various student relationship officer communications with the students. This has helped boost our numbers from a fairly modest 1 to 3 attending at the very beginning of semester to a peak of 83 students across the 2 sessions in that final week. And again, the topic preparing for the online exams was particularly pertinent to many of those students at the time. So looking forward, we're going to continue amending our program due to the continued but changing COVID-19 situation. So we're already diversifying our content again to appeal to and meet the needs of a broader range of students in the university. We're also going to try delivering via webinar to help us increase interactivity with the large groups. We're going to use higher level promotional strategies, so within the greater USQ environment, and that will be facilitated by our managers, Debbie Howarth and Lyndall Gunton. And we're looking at, hopefully, adding another advisor and librarian discipline team, so a third team, to further increase opportunities for students to join one or more of the tutorials, and perhaps more importantly for them and for us too, to access more strengths in terms of perspectives and expertise. And that's what I had to say today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rhona. That's really interesting. Next up, we have Claire Thorpe from the University of Southern Queensland. Claire will be talking to us about empathy and storytelling, supporting staff during the pandemic.
Thanks, Harry. And it's great to be able to follow on from Rowena's story about how wonderfully we've been able to support the students. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our staff's experience of the pandemic period. I picked the word empathy for the title of my lightning talk, so I do want to practice that today. And in spite of the quote on the screen from one of our staff members, I am not going to pretend that the last 3 months have been all rainbows and unicorns. There have been long periods during the last 3 months, and let's be honest, it has sucked. And whether you've been at home working, juggling kids' learning activities, or whether you've been on campus supporting clients with access to collections and spaces, if you've been grieving the loss of travel plans or other opportunities, I'd like to acknowledge that it has been a difficult period. Many of us have never worked so hard in our lives, and that work has been more emotionally draining than perhaps it's ever been. And I'd also like to invite you to practice empathy today. For those of us who have been involved in making decisions about how we offer the services that keep our staff and students safe in our libraries, to an extent, we've been making those decisions with the best information available. And I think it's important to remember that the leadership teams of every university library around Australia and New Zealand have had to develop responses that satisfies their institutions' requirements, their government's requirements, and also community expectations. So some have kept libraries open and some have closed, as we did. So as you listen to the different case studies today, I would encourage you to be empathetic and to avoid judging the different responses, because I think there is no one right response and every approach does have its merits. So USQ Library has been operating in an exclusively online service model since March the 25th, and we will reopen for semester 2. 92% of our staff have been working on home for the past 3 months, and those staff who were unable to do that actually were unable to do so because they did not have technology or internet access at their personal residence. And that particularly highlighted to me that the digital divide is very much present and real within our staff, not just within our student experience. So like many of you, our teams have consciously engaged in activities to create social and emotional connections while we are apart. So we have seen the rise of online coffee chats and lunches, Friday afternoon drinks on occasion, and shared music playlists. And many staff had the opportunity to attend the wedding of one of our liaison librarians over Zoom. So we had plenty of anecdotal evidence that staff were coping well during this strange time, but I wanted to understand a little bit more about the experience so that we can learn from this period and not just have it as a thing that happened once upon a time. And I wanted our staff to actually have a voice and to tell us in their own words. I know that many of you have been doing the same thing, doing staff surveys and focus groups and checking in, so this probably isn't anything new. The approach that I took was inspired by an activity out of the UK from Silip, Wales, who have a project called For the Record, where they invited their members to share stories about libraries, work and life during the pandemic. So using this as an example, I invited our library staff to write a short response to 4 story starters to share their experience. I used our online survey platform so that it could be anonymous, and about 2/3 of the respondents chose to respond anonymously and to engage, and we had 25 people who chose to engage in this reflective practice activity. Personally, I was actually quite surprised at how positive the responses were. We are working on doing a more comprehensive thematic and sentiment analysis of the results, but what I've popped on screen is my initial mind map of the responses that we received. And there are 6 themes that I think are emerging from this evidence. During this period, our staff have felt connected. As we no longer had campuses, campus bias disappeared, and it became very apparent to many staff how much they had preferred people who were working on the same campus and not necessarily operating equitably across. That's certainly something I'm very keen to see us retain as we return back to the office. They felt trusted and supported. They felt they had autonomy and trust from their supervisors and could get the help that they needed from their peers at any time through our different communication channels. Their work has become more innovative as they work to find solutions to transform our services, and it's been more rewarding as we see the increased take-up in services from our clients, such as the example Rowena has just given. And they felt productive and creative, with more time to focus and less interruptions from people in the open plan workspace. They've also found this time personally enjoyable, with commutes disappearing, more time with family and pets or in the garden. However, the challenges of working at home, having the laptop in the home environment, balancing children's learning needs, technology, and of course the dreaded Zoom overload. So the stories that staff have shared with us are influencing the service design of our return to campus plan and the way that we will continue to support them in flexible working options. And we've even been able to talk about these preliminary results with our Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Vice-Chancellor when they paid us a team visit recently. We want to build on the benefits of this period and the lessons learned as we move into the next normal. More than anything, I think these staff stories have provided evidence around the success of our team culture at USQ Library, about our staff resilience and their kindness both to each other and to our clients. As we plan to reopen our campus next month, the challenge will be to hold on to the lessons of COVID-19 and to continue to be as connected, supportive, productive and innovative as we have been over the past 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. So interesting to hear both staff and the student perspectives on this. Next up, we have Michael from the University of Newcastle talking to us about going virtual at University of Newcastle libraries.
Thanks, Harry. So I'm from the client experience team at the University of Newcastle Library. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways our team has responded to COVID-19 and specifically about the introduction of live virtual help desks. At the University of Newcastle, a decision was taken for our libraries to remain open during the COVID-19 lockdown and to continue to provide essential services for our students. The challenge faced by the library staff was how we could continue to provide assistance at our physical service points whilst adhering to the new social distancing guidelines. Our solution was to introduce live virtual help desks using Zoom technology. So you can see on the slide here, I have a photo of one of our live virtual help desks. There is a screen at the service zone where a staff member would usually stand, and a little bit of signage for the students about how to use the virtual desk. The screen there we have set up as a Zoom room. Frontline staff are then able to sit in a staff area of the library, log into Zoom as themselves and invite this Zoom room to a meeting. So there is a continuous meeting running between the service zone and the staff member. Anyone who then walks up to the screen will be in the Zoom meeting without having to do or touch anything. They're able to see and hear the staff member and can just start speaking with them. So in essence, we have a virtual staff member at the service zone, a visible presence that students can approach with their inquiries in the same way that they would approach a person standing at the desk. There are a few small differences to being physically at the service point. We quickly worked out which way is left and right for the people we are talking to, because it is very difficult to point through the screen. But basically the interactions with the students are very similar to being at the desk in person. There are still some issues, of course, which can't be dealt with virtually, such as printer issues, but having established the importance of social distancing through the virtual desk, clients are much more aware of the distancing when a staff member does need to go out to the floor. It took a little time for staff and students to get used to the live virtual help desks, but virtual staff have quickly become a familiar presence in our libraries. The students are now used to approaching the virtual desks, and we even get some waves and hellos like we would have when we were physically present. Implementing virtual desks has been very successful in terms of providing a service in the library. It resembles our usual service as closely as possible and provides an alternative to our online contact points. It has also made it easier to maintain social distancing and reduce some of the concern that staff and students had about coming into the library. Another aspect of going virtual through this lockdown period has stemmed from the sudden need for some of our client experience team to work from home. The team members working from home took on the delivery of all the online chat services, which was also a new function for our team. So there was a steep learning curve in terms of becoming familiar with new technology and working in new ways. With the team dispersed between work from home and working on site and all the other changes in the ways that we were working, communication really became very critical for us. One tool that really facilitated this communication was Microsoft Teams, another new piece of software for us. And we've really embraced using Microsoft Teams and continue to develop how we use it to suit the situation as it develops. For example, we have created a channel just for posting about current issues that arise. And this has really allowed team members, whether they're in the library or working from home, to share information, keep up to date with what's happening. It has also allowed us to keep in touch with each other in real time, ask questions and give each other support. This has been really crucial for the success of both the virtual desks and our online chat service. Going virtual has enabled the library to maintain its face-to-face service through the lockdown, and it has also provided an opportunity for us in the client experience team to build digital dexterity and become familiar with new technologies. The online connectedness has been really great for our team, and we will continue to develop these skills and use these technologies as people return to work and students return to our libraries as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. That's, again, another perspective. Very interesting to see the service side of things and the telepresence appearing there. Next up, we have Amy Dale from the University of Adelaide talking to us about community legends.
Hi, everybody. Just share my slide with you. Hopefully you can all see that. No, maybe you can't see my slide and my notes. Technology failed today. Hey, had to be somebody. I will quickly show you the artwork there and then I will come back to that in a minute. So as Harry said, I'm Amy Dale from the University of Adelaide. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Ghana land, beautiful Ghana land, slightly cold today though, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and also extend that respect to Indigenous people from First Nation communities that you all come from as well. Community legends. So I recently joined the University of Adelaide and 2020 was going to be my year. It was going to be the first year that we had a full exhibitions program. It was going to consist of in-house curated shows, which I was going to curate myself, touring exhibitions from other institutions, and programming for all the major state festivals here in South Australia. So then coronavirus hit and everything had to be cancelled or postponed. And at that time I was witnessing the glam sector moving a lot of their content online. And I was looking around and I was thinking, this is not an easy transition for me because I had two big issues. Firstly, as the program was recently established, I had little in the pipeline, or there was very little from past projects that could be recycled. And secondly, I was really keen to create something of lasting value. I felt we were being swamped with online content, and I wanted to create something that when I look back, 2021, I still felt it was really worthwhile. So Community Legends was born. It's a grassroots awards program where people can nominate members of our university community for the small things that have made a difference during the crisis. And the winners will have their portraits created by a local artist called Frushi Kines. And Frushi did this artwork for me that you can now see on your screen. And this is the University of Adelaide's campus on North Terrace. This is the hero artwork for the project. So what were the aims of the project? I wanted to tie in with the university wellbeing plan by sharing stories of resilience. I was keen to commission original artwork and support an artist during this difficult economic time. I also really this is a sneaky one. I wanted to capture details of people's lives and experience during the crisis, but not follow the same thing that other institutions were doing, where you have a portal and you submit photos, and you've probably all seen them spring up. But I felt capturing the university experience was really going to be really important in the future for telling the story of how, we all dealt with the crisis, because we have some unique challenges in our sector. I aim to have rolling content which could be released as we went along to keep people interested. And the project also provided a very different approach to our portrait commissioning. If those of you who have artwork collections in your universities, you probably know we specialize in dead white guys. So we're going to do something a little bit different. And I also wanted to broaden the discussion around who our heroes are. So at the time I was planning this project, there was a lot of chat about healthcare heroes. And although they're obviously really worthy of our respect, I wanted to broaden that out to say, we can all do our part, we can all make a difference. And I think it's also quite interesting to take that point when we look at the recent activity around Black Lives Matter and the questioning of monuments that we have around the world and who we actually want to pay our respects to. So outcomes so far. The nominations were open for a week, and the first round closed on Monday. We had 63 nominations, which was awesome, and we selected our first 3 winners. A further 3 winners will be chosen from the second round. The project really resonated with people in the university, and I've been able to establish some really great partnerships as a result, and that's quite important for me being newish. For example, external relations have been really helpful with the marketing and promotion. So the winners are all going to feature in an online exhibition. However, my longer term goal is to curate a physical exhibition on site with the portraits later in the year. The COVID-19 crisis has made exhibition curators deeply question the value we offer to the public, and as well as our modes of operation. And I would argue there's still enormous value in the physical exhibition, but we can no longer be complacent in the digital realm. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Amy. Again, a completely unique perspective on the challenges being faced and confronted in the crisis. Next up, we have Catherine Hay from Griffith University talking to us about online workshops made easy, be it with a lot of hard work.
Catherine, you're muted.
Sorry, trying to do too many things at once. Hi, everyone. So I'm the coordinator of researcher services at Griffith University Library, and today I'll be sharing our experience with rapidly switching to online delivery of workshops due to COVID-19. So one of the goals for our team in 2020, before this, was to develop online versions of our workshops, as well as self-paced tutorials where practical. Now, COVID-19 really accelerated this process. It wasn't a simple task, and we faced some significant challenges. So both librarians and academics have some strong opinions about the suitability of workshop content being delivered online. And these are mainly driven by concerns about the user experience and educational value. Once COVID-19 struck, we ran out of options. It had to be done, and there was no time to gently bring everyone along on the journey as we would normally do. So we had to emphasize that while learning outcomes are the same, face-to-face, online, and self-paced tutorials deliver content in different ways and provide different experiences. Not better, not worse, just different. And all these different modes have their place and have different purposes, so are not replacements for each other. We also had to assure team members where they had concerns that once an online workshop was delivered and recorded, they would remove the need to ever have to run the workshop again. So there had to be a lot of reassurance around this, that this was not the reality. The second barrier was technology. Do we have the technology? What is it? And do we have the ability to learn to use it effectively? So as people have mentioned before, upskilling in the different technologies was a university-wide challenge for us. So we made use of the organizational resources and support available, as well as sharing knowledge within the library. At Griffith, we also have digital capability advisors in our library team who are tasked with providing additional support in the use of technology, and were available to provide one-on-one assistance when needed. So due to this great support, even those in our team who were not comfortable with this level of technology use had been able to step up. And the third barrier was the lack of confidence in our ability to develop and deliver online workshops. Do we actually have the skills to do this effectively? Now, librarians, in my experience, tend to undervalue their skill set, and the team had a lot of self-doubt about their ability to do this. However, true to form, they stepped up to the challenge, and I think they surprised themselves with their success. So we had lots of conversations about trying different formats to try and break rigid thinking, offering examples of flipped classrooms or breaking up content into a series of workshops and reconceptualizing how we do things, which resulted in some great innovations and experimentation. Now, a very positive outcome from this was the boost in self-esteem and realization that they're actually far more skilled than they believe they are. So what were our results? Well, we were able to convert all our planned workshops to online versions, and only some of them had to be delayed in order to give us time to do this. And online delivery has been incredibly successful for us, with 4 times as many attendees being able to access our workshops, which was fantastic. So what did we learn? Basically, we need to be genuine when we talk about failing forward. It's a concept that we often discuss in theory, but it's actually quite hard to achieve in practice. We fortunately have a very amazing management team who are open and understanding that this was a really difficult time and everyone was doing the best they could under the circumstances. And due to the rapid turnaround, there was no time for perfectionism, and we learned as we went along. It's also important to share your experience. So this helped us to improve our practices quickly and embrace constructive feedback. Lesson 1, online teaching is collaborative. You should always have at least one helper because you need someone to deal with the technical issues and monitor and respond to questions in the chat channel. So having a supportive team who are willing to help out with preparation and delivery made all the difference. And this very collaborative process helped improve relationships, our product, and our knowledge transfer. And librarians have always been agile and responsive in the way that the team successfully adapted to completely changed circumstances and requirements while dealing with some extremely challenging conditions at home and personally demonstrates what we are capable of. And in summary, librarians are awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Again, so interesting to hear how the challenges were dealt with and the lessons learned. Next up, we have Steph Piper from the University of Southern Queensland talking to us about face shields for healthcare workers in regional Toowoomba.
Hi everyone, my name's Steph Piper and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the University of Southern Queensland, and my role is to manage the library makerspace. So as you're all aware, when this first began, we had huge global PPE shortages, and it was sort of pretty worrying considering our healthcare professionals were working with patients who had something incredibly infectious and couldn't adequately protect themselves with proper face masks, goggles, all the things that you need to protect your mucous membranes from people coughing and sneezing that could potentially infect you. And so worldwide, some of the awesome makers out there who have 3D printers, who have laser cutters, were able to come up with some pretty awesome solutions really quickly. And the classic one that you've probably already seen is the face shields project. So this is what one of them looks like here. I'm also holding one in the slide there. And you can see that like it's easily 3D printable and it can be laser cut altogether. So it's quite simple and easy to put together, which is pretty nice. And so down in Brisbane, the project was already starting. And so we had folks from Metro North putting a call out for 3,000 of these face shields, and they ended up making that goal within a week, which is pretty wild. And there's also some teams from Metro South as well that ended up putting together like more like thousands of these face shields. And because at USQ, we're down in, like I'm personally on the Toowoomba campus, it's about an hour and a half away from Brisbane. And I was worried that we weren't, you know, potentially going to get prioritized as an area that those guys would respond to. And like where we're positioned anyway, we're a bit of a gateway to all of the rural communities that sit outside in Southeast Queensland. And so I ended up getting a call from Darling Downs Health, one of our local healthcare providers, who said, is there a way for you guys to help out? And I said, of course we can, we'll figure something out. And the same day, lucky for me, my laser cutter guy contacted me and said, Steph, I've just ordered enough material to make 700 of those face shield things I've seen on the internet. We're going to do this? And I said, yes, let's go, let's do it. And so what I did was, like through my role as the community engagement coordinator, I had a whole range of different contacts from working on various medical healthcare projects and various community projects. And we ended up setting up this action group here called Darling Downs PPE. And you can go and visit the website, it's still up if you'd like to have a quick peek. But essentially it was a touch point for anyone in the community who wanted to request face shields and anyone who could donate face shields. And so as we were doing this, of course, to be honest, it was quite a stressful project to make sure that we were above board with everything that was going on. Legal-wise, we ended up finding out that the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the big board that manages this kind of thing in Australia, put out a blanket legal exemption for any PPE that was created for the pandemic. And one of the companies down in Brisbane that was managing it as well ended up getting TGA registration for these face shields. And meanwhile, while we were stressing out the legal side of things, some of our local GPs here in Toowoomba were going down to Bunnings on weekends to buy gloves, cutting up garbage bags on the weekends to get their smocks. Yeah, it was quite a dire situation, and it was sort of like a bit of a race between can we figure out the legals and can we cater for these people that need this stuff right now. And yeah, anyway, the project was really successful. So we finished up by delivering 370 face shields to local aged care, hospitals and healthcare providers, plus 150 touch-free door openers where you can sort of hold it and you can press buttons and open doors with it without touching anything. So what I really liked about this project anyway is it shows that our local manufacturers can meet an agile need. They can meet that supply chain need straight away, while some of our bigger, more injection molding, mass manufacturer type technologies are still tooling up. So we can get in there and get it done right now. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Steph. Yeah, so that comes from a library too, right? It's absolutely amazing the kinds of things that people are able to do when the challenge is put down. Our last presentation will be given by Carly and Kayleen from Southern Cross University, and they will be talking to you about the perfect storm, seizing COVID-19 created opportunities.
Thanks so much, Harry. And thanks everyone for the opportunity to present today. I'll start and then Carly will do the second half. So the unique combination of events associated with COVID-19, such as campus libraries closing, programs moving online, and staff needing to work from home, created the perfect storm for university libraries. However, for Southern Cross University Library, this potential uncertain and negative situation was transformed into a positive outcome as we enthusiastically seized opportunities to progress digital dexterity and open educational resources initiatives. In the very early stages of preparing for the closure of campus libraries, we were already actively building our digital capabilities so that we could easily adapt and transition to working from home. Technologies such as Zoom and MS Teams were quickly installed, SpringShare accounts were created, and we supported each other to skill up so that we could manage the reality of being physically isolated from our teams, yet still needing to manage our day-to-day tasks and ongoing projects. This was all done with amazing agility, collegiality, a can-do attitude, and lots of virtual morning teas. And we are leveraging this connectedness to continue to build our digital capabilities over the coming months through our professional development program, Tips and Tricks. We also utilised our existing chat servers to provide a frontline connection with our university community. And through the ability of increased internal communications via MS Teams, we've created a community of digital dexterity support for each other. We also migrated all our on-call and subject librarian appointments to online, which was fairly easy as we had already been using Zoom for some time. And we are currently adapting our frontline service model to streamline support for students and staff. As all of our programs were transitioning online, we audited our existing services and resources and implemented strategies to ensure that we're able to continue providing these seamlessly in the digital space. We had existing LibWizard information and digital literacy tutorials available, which allowed us to continue supporting students online. So these tutorials including a series of generic online learning modules and discipline-specific tutorials to support units where programs were previously delivered during face-to-face classes. And as a consequence of the need to move online at Southern Cross and the imperative that students have the necessary skills to help them navigate the online landscape, the library has been presented with new opportunities to progress our online digital dexterity project, the Digital Matrix for Students. This program consists of self-paced, interactive topics that include information and activities designed to develop students' digital skills, knowledge, and understanding. And communication so far with key stakeholders, including staff from our Pathways College, have been very positive and may not have progressed so far if not for the perfect storm.
Thank you, Kayleen. So another opportunity that has emerged from this perfect storm has been a chance to push our conversation about OER textbooks into hyperdrive. So just a quick refresher or introduction of OER texts. OER texts are openly and freely available texts that are A, in the public domain, or B, licensed with a CC license to retain, reuse, revise, remix, or redistribute the resource. So in contrast sits the commercially published book. And I think some of us could agree that COVID has shone a harsh light on this model, highlighting the pitfalls and the exorbitant costs associated with unlimited digital user access. So last summer, conveniently a couple of months before COVID hit, our library joined a CAUL consortium focused on OER textbooks. So this led us to do a deep dive on their benefits and how to pitch them to academics, collaborating and learning from other unis. And while within our own library, we've been busy developing a primo collection of OER textbooks that are searchable under our school areas within our catalogue, our library catalogue. So at the same time, another factor pushing the conversation along has been a partnership with the Centre for Teaching and Learning and their support of our role in helping to embed OERs in the curriculum across the university. So when COVID hit, we were right to exploit that opportunity, just as the pressure to provide students with digital access amped up. So from this point, many of us had OER conversations at multiple levels. So this included formal director level meetings and school board meetings, and also the very important informal ground level liaison with our academics when speaking about reading lists and prescribed texts. So at SCU, the team had already negotiated before COVID the adoption of a chemistry OpenStax book. But as a result of these recent conversations, we now have some OER adoptions across other schools, including an OpenStax psychology text, and this replaces the old one that was worth $212. So it's saving, as you can see, students thousands of dollars each session, and a long list of OpenStax maths texts. So while we have accelerated the pace of these conversations since COVID, purely due to that urgency, we're also aware of playing the long game on this, leveraging COVID as a chance to plant those seeds in the minds of academics through conversations that are still ongoing. So as one of our academics recently tweeted, "Hey academic Twitter, we can help our students by using OER textbooks. It's the way of the future and I don't use anything else. Ask your librarians to help." Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both for that. So that brings us to the end of our presentations for this session. And before I say anything else, I'd like to extend my thanks to all of you for presenting your diverse perspectives on the challenges and innovations faced during COVID-19. It's a little bit of a virtual thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to hear all of those different perspectives. And as I said at the start, but for those of you who've joined us late or during the presentations, we had scheduled this session for an hour and we are at the end of our hour. However, for those of you who would like to stay on now, we do have a Slido poll, well, it's not really a poll, an event set up where we've been capturing questions throughout the presentations, and the same goes for the presenters. If you will indulge us and stay on for a little bit longer, I will share my screen with those questions and we can go through some of those for the next 10 or so minutes or however long people would like to talk about those, just to add a little bit more to the presentations you've heard today. But I completely understand if you wish to leave us now. So just give me a moment while I pop the information into the chat for the questions and I'll get my screen up. So that's in the chat and I will share my screen if I can remember how to do this. Sharing my screen. Can you all see this? You're welcome to talk over the top of me.
Yes, we can.
Presenters.
Thank you.
So clearly the most popular question is for our first presenter. Would you like me to read them out? I will read them out actually, although the screen does get recorded. The first question is, how did you manage the time difference in China when using chat? And this one will go to, well, unless someone else wants to jump in, I think it's directed at Pamela. You'll just need to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. So we already have the Ask the Library service operating until midnight. So we were able to provide that service between, we were able to provide that service between 8:30 and 9:30 China time, because so our Ask the Library staff would stay until midnight as per usual, and that meant that they covered the time till 9:30 in China. So it's pretty good coverage.
So not particularly difficult, but definitely it's something you've got to get your head around when you're doing that sort of digital online delivery to different countries, right?
Yeah, and of course it was the staff, the Mandarin speaking staff, who actually hopped in to that roster and actually rearranged their lives basically for quite a few weeks so that they could deliver that service. So they delivered the bilingual service for that time. At night, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just move through the questions now so we can get a couple of them done rather than having a discussion about them. The next one is for virtual desks. How do you cope with students who want to show you things on their laptops and start holding them up to the screen? Happy for anyone who wants to jump in on this.
Well, I guess that's directed towards me. It definitely has been an issue for us. Lots of students come up holding their laptops and even phones as well, even smaller. And it doesn't work through the screen. We have to get students to read them out or try and discuss the issue. It's very difficult to see things. And as I said, there are some times when you do just have to go out to the floor. The virtual desk doesn't cope with every situation, but it's just about setting up those social distancing guidelines. So when you do go out, people are aware and don't come up too close.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be very challenging. The next one's more a comment than a question. Another one for Pam. Were there any affected students concerned about possible fallout using the VPN?
Not that we were aware of. Certainly no reports of that. The VPN was heavily used, but we didn't hear of any concerns of that nature. I'm presuming there wasn't much concern given how heavily used it was.
It's one of those things that could be hard to capture. I noticed that there's a follow-up question in relation to the service desks question, which appeared in the chat, which is, did you explore screen share? Michael.
So how do you mean by screen share? Where is that question?
Oh, I just saw it pop up in the Zoom chat. And I thought,
oh, okay.
Just reading the other questions here to see which ones we can address.
I think, Michael, it says, did you explore screen share?
Okay, no, we haven't used screen share. The virtual desk is really just for people who are in the library and just to approach the screen like you would a member of staff at the desk. We do also have Library Live, which is a online video chat that you can have with the librarian, and that's a bit more in depth, so they have a bit more time, but the virtual desk is really quick, just like you would at the normal desk, so no screen share, very simple.
And there are two questions here on Slido relating to the virtual help desk. I guess we can roll those into one for you now you're talking about it.
Yeah, sure.
With the staff members sitting on the desk, were they there the whole time, or were they alerted when a student came to the screen? And I guess then the follow on there is, were they allocated shifts or not?
Yep, so our client experience team members were doing 2-hour shifts on the virtual desk, and they are in a staff area in the library, which has close access to the front, the service zone. So they're at a computer, they're watching the screen like you would if you were sitting at the desk, but also you can do other things on the computer as you're waiting, but just making sure you're making eye contact with people as they're coming in, just trying to level and visible presence. So really just trying to replicate the physical staff member just through the virtual screen. Yeah.
Question for Claire. What were your story starter questions?
Yeah, sure. Harry, if I can share my screen really quickly and show those, if that's easier than trying to read them out.
Yeah, sure. Let me just stop mine. There you go.
Okay. So, as I said, there were 4 main story starters. What I've enjoyed about my work is, what I've been challenged by, what I'm looking forward to when I return to campus, the way I feel about my work team and the library now. And that really drew out things like I'm feeling connected, supported, anxious about returning to work. I had a kind of a free field there for people who didn't quite fit or didn't want to respond to any of the previous points. They were all, there was no mandatory fields. And we also had a playlist that we put together. People suggested a song that summed up their experience, and we put that together on Spotify and shared it with staff.
Yeah, I'm just leaving that up there for a second, but thanks. I suppose the process of coming up with those questions would have been an interesting one.
Yeah.
get my screen back up. Sharing. I do note that 2 people have put questions in the Q&As in Zoom. I was trying to avoid using that, but I'll read those ones out quickly. The first one, which is for us in the office here, is will we make Wednesday sessions recording available and when? We just, because it dropped out towards the end of the Q&A, we will make that session available as soon as we've combined the last half with the first half, and that'll be done when we put this one up as well, probably early next week, for those who are interested. But the second question in there, which is, I think, for anyone that commented on using Teams, is the Zoom versus Teams question, which is better for delivering online services. I know we've talked about the difference between the 2 platforms a lot in the office, but I couldn't comment on it from a service delivery point of view.
Harry, just to add to that, someone needs to do an analysis of Adobe Connect, Zoom, Skype, in terms of how flexible each of those platforms are when delivering content. That would be great.
Yeah.
A project for somebody.
Does anyone else want to comment? Yeah, Alyssa?
From what I've heard from our librarian team here, have been using Teams quite a lot. And I think what's nice about that is that you can keep the chat going after perhaps you've finished a video conversation. So you've got both kind of mechanisms working, and they can keep working, I guess, for an ongoing conversation. Whereas in Zoom, kind of once you've shut it down, you've kind of closed off the channel. So I can kind of see the advantages of Teams for that ongoing connection with someone.
Yeah, I could add a few things to that as well, if that's okay, Harry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the difference, being a liaison librarian, of course, I have a lot of consultations, appointments with students, and our service, our on-call service, what we call an on-call librarian or Zoom librarian, we of course use Zoom, but I mostly use Teams when we're connecting with internally in the library, so it just makes it so much easier to connect that way. So we have not only just chat, which we have for a lot of our teams, like our chat, and we use SpringShare, so we have a chat and lib answers team, and so librarians and technicians can talk via Teams. We also have channels, so channels for different teams within the library, so we do use Teams, and that's why I mentioned it, and only a few of us had used it before, and we have just basically we've gobbled it up is how I would press it. It's just amazing, and it's just created that connectedness that we would have normally, but just even more so. But I use my Zoom as my outward facing connection, and MS Teams would be my internal facing connection, so with my colleagues.
All right. I'll just try and grab a couple of questions out of here. We can address those, and then I'll let you all go. There were 2 in Slido for Alyssa. First one was about managing copyright considerations when providing book chapters. And then the second one was about quarantining periods for high demand textbooks.
Yeah, good questions. Of course, we did manage copyright. So our digitisation service was more about expanding our offering to undergraduate students. So typically we wouldn't, or in the past, we haven't offered to digitise a chapter or an article for an undergraduate student, but we did that in the COVID time, and we might continue doing that for the rest of the year, actually. But that's the usual, 1 chapter or 10% kind of guidelines. We did in some cases go and seek special copyright permission from publishers and authors if it was something we wanted to make available, perhaps through for a number of students requesting the same thing and so on. So we were certainly paying close attention to all of the copyright requirements in what we were doing. And on the quarantining of books front, it was a concern, and I read a lot of the information and lots of conflicting sort of reports of how long COVID can live on paper surfaces and things like this. In the end, with the community transmission being very, very low in Western Australia throughout, we felt safe to not introduce any kind of quarantining period for our high demand books, and we felt that doing so would obviously reduce access and weighing up all of the factors we felt we didn't need to, but we were certainly monitoring whether or not that was something we needed to manage.
Thanks for that. 2 questions further down for Amy. First one is about, were there any selection criteria for the Community Hero winners? And do you have any examples that you could share of things people were nominated for?
Thanks, Harry. I wanted to keep the selection criteria quite open. I really wanted it to be an inclusive thing, but running it through legal and risk, they were like, no, you need some selection criteria. So we went for looking at people who exhibited care and welfare for other people in the community. I was also interested in getting submissions for people who were being tech savvy, but really helping others out and supporting others to develop their technology skills, and remaining ambitious and showing positivity. So reading the nominations was so beautiful. They were just like coming in all the time, and everyone would be pleased to hear that a lot of the students said really wonderful things about the staff members, which is really nice. Lots of lecturers who went really above and beyond. So we had a nomination from somebody in the dental school who was teaching students who didn't have equipment how to use teaspoons to do examinations and things like that, which I thought was really cute. And a lot of nominations for students who were supporting other international students using technology as well. So really wide range, but yeah, really lovely responses.
Excellent. I think this might be almost the last question we'll have time for. Rowena, what were some of the session topics that you had?
Okay. So just your standard library topics, I suppose. So around referencing and finding information, and then a lot of academic skill focused ones too. So academic writing, paraphrasing and synthesis, reflective writing. So here we go, Kate's responding in the chat, understanding assignment questions and so on. And all of that, a lot of that was derived because the learning advisors, they sort of know what students are asking. So they were able to develop content that reflected that, which was really useful. Thank you.
Are there any questions in the Slido that any of you would like to address before we finish? I'll give you the opportunity to nominate anything that jumps out.
I'd like to address some of the OER questions.
Yep.
So I think if you can just scroll up a bit, Harry, there was one about academics who are wed to their textbooks.
Oh, yes.
So this is, you know, this is the age-old challenge, particularly if their curriculum is bound up with a textbook. Or they think that their curriculum is bound up with a unique textbook. I've got a conversation at the moment underway with one of our health academics to talk about them embedding an anatomy and physiology textbook into their unit. They are wed to their current textbook. And I guess it's about sort of maybe doing some analysis about the content, you know, comparing what you know, cross-checking the content against both resources, playing that long game. The only reason why that conversation opened up with that particular academic was because she got wind that another health academic had embedded something in their course. So I was interested in just having a conversation about it. So yeah, identifying champions that can kind of lead the way for other academics as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one other one about publishing, OERs and publishing.
Yeah.
That's the next frontier for us. Like at the moment, we've been focused on promoting them and trying to get them embedded into some of our units. The next part of the conversation with the CAUL Consortium, we did talk about that when we had our summer institute. So that's, you know, like looking at some of the platforms like Pressbooks and collaborating with other institutions. I think there's so many opportunities to not act in silo and actually collaborate cross institution. You know, if there is a gap there, there's a lot of a gap in terms of nursing texts, Australian nursing texts, and that was identified as potential texts that universities could work on collaboratively to solve that problem of that sort of unique Australian text that's needed. The next question, have most academics been supportive? Yes, they have, but out of the urgency of COVID. It's, you know, that conversation about getting that digital access has really just accelerated, as I mentioned in our presentation. So I haven't had any academic that's not open to talking about it yet. I know that they're out there, you know, particularly if they have relationships with publishers, but at this stage, you know, some are open but just may not have the time. But for the most part, it's been positive so far.
Yeah, it's really interesting how things have changed so suddenly and people have had to adapt.
We don't have the reliance on the library copy, you know, the fallback of the reserved copy that people can physically access. So it really exposes those sort of, you know, pitfalls.
Any other questions jump out to any of you? I know I've been scrolling randomly up and down. I was trying to find some, but they move around a little bit when people vote on them.
Yeah, I just wanted to, there were a couple of questions in there about the legality of using a VPN.
Yep.
In China, and we did get advice from our UniSA legal team. It's definitely legal. In terms of whether it's going to be a long-term solution, that's not the intention.
Yeah, I imagine that would have been a challenging thing to begin with.
Yeah. Thank you.
Harry, I was just going to say, how amazing would it have been if we could have had this conversation a few months ago?
Yes.
It really was such a challenging time making all these decisions with very short notice, and it's really wonderful that even just a few months on, there's so much reflection and such a lot of great learning that we'll be able to take forward into business as usual now.
I totally agree. And someone's saying something in the chat, but I'm finding it hard to get that one up because I'm screen sharing. But what I might do on that note is just bring this session to a close and let you get on with your days. But, you know, to add to that, we've all been so amazingly busy for the last 3 months, and just, I think in the last 2 weeks, coming out and being able to reflect heavily on what's been happening, or at least even from our perspective here in the CAUL National Office. And now having the opportunity to bring you together in different ways to talk about the experiences and to hear about the challenges and the solutions. It's just lovely to see how everyone managed to deal with such adversity at such short notice. And also, you know, there are huge commonalities in the struggles and the way that they were dealt with across the library space, but also a diversity in the things that we've heard here today. Everything from OERs to telepresence, virtual service desks, to, you know, maker spaces, face masks, to exhibitions and the challenges in that space, which are, you know, the GLAM sector has had so many of its own challenges as well. So I'd like to thank you all again for presenting on these diverse topics, and hopefully we'll find ways of keeping this conversation alive and continuing to hear from you on the ground and to capture these responses going forward. I know the team that put this session together is very keen to look at ways where we can stimulate further conversations, so they will likely be in touch with everyone about how we can do that. And I'd also like to thank our audience. We did have, as I said, over 350 people registered to attend, and I note at the peak we were almost approaching 300 people in attendance at one point. It's an amazing response from the community in terms of, you know, I'm sure we've all been on Zoom so many times over the last 3 months to still come out and want to hear what's going on. So we're really grateful for all the participation. And this session has been recorded, so once we've got the recordings and tidied those up, we'll put them on our YouTube channel and make those available to everyone. So thank you all so much for coming, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Harry.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Harry.
Harry.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.